All in.
It just... This is great. This is what good poker looks like. I watched over a dozen hours of poker, and every player, even the pros, made the same critical mistake, and they had no idea. I went back through old episodes of Poker Out Loud, a show where players literally think out loud during real hands. And after coaching over 700 students, I realized most of them were making the same mistake before they came to us. If you're anything like they were, it's popping up in almost every hand you play, and it could be costing you a small fortune. So I did what any very reasonable, normal person would do. I put together a bingo card. I call it Bad Thoughts Bingo. 16 squares. We're gonna listen to their thought processes, play bingo, and I'm gonna break down the one mistake to rule them all, plus 15 more. By the end, you'll see what this mistake is and how it can spiral out of control during hands. You'll spot where you're making it in your own game, and I'll show you what you should be thinking about in every hand instead. Let's jump in.
Have an easy open here. Cut off.
30.
Yeah, I mean, this is fine enough. Just one thing to add quickly to Trevor's thought process here. I would always want to be thinking about who is behind me, who's on the button. Is this player going to be 3-betting a lot? And then also, who are in the blinds, right? This is really going to determine our open strategy in the cutoff. If there are weak players in the blinds and we have a skill edge over them and they're calling too wide, right, we're going to be able to open just much wider from the cutoff than equilibrium. So that's one question that I always want to take into account.
All right. I think we're just going to continue the theme of 3-betting. This hand should probably do pretty well against the cutoff opening range. So although it does suck that we are in the small blind, we're just going to keep up the aggression like we have so far. Seems like it's been working okay. Just do 4x to 120.
The one thing I want to point out here, I agree with Rampage's decision to 3-bet. I think this is a slam dunk 3-bet versus a cutoff open. But the one thing I'd be thinking about here is, what is the cutoff's opening range, right? Is this guy opening wider than equilibrium? Is he opening tighter? How deep are we? What is the effective stack? Who is behind us in the big blind? These are some of the questions I'd be asking. You'll notice Rampage here made it more about his own story, right? I'm going to continue the theme of the night, instead of asking what I would consider to be more of the relevant questions here. So we come to the same answer, but I don't necessarily love the process of getting there. Going to our Bad Thoughts bingo card here, a little bit of metagame here. It sounds like, you know, I've done this. I'm continuing the theme of the night.
120.
I can go a couple different ways here. I can either flat or 4-bet.
Or you could fold.
I'm gonna mix in a 4-bet here just because I feel like it. It's getting towards the end of the night and let's get spicy.
All right, so I don't really know what this. I feel like this is the thoughts that go through most live players' heads in hands. Like I feel like it. I don't like this guy's face. It's spicy. It feels good. First question I'm asking from Trevor's perspective, what is my opponent's range, right? Maybe Rampage is just playing a 3-bet or fold strategy, which means maybe he's 3-betting at an appropriate frequency. Next question I'm asking, what is the stack depth? How many big blinds effective are we here? Because that's going to inform our strategy, right? How deep are we and what is our opponent's range? Those are the first questions I want to be asking here. Next question that I think is super important, how is my opponent going to respond to 4-bets? Is he going to call too much? Is he going to 5-bet too much? Is he going to fold too much? If we think our opponent is going to call quite a bit, like if they're going to be very call happy and not believe us from the small blind here, we'd probably want to go linear. We just want to 4-bet like good hands, like 10s, jacks, queens, ace queen suited, king queen suited, these type of hands, etc. However, since our opponent is out of position, usually when our opponents are out of position, they get a little bit less sticky. I'm not sure about Rampage in particular. If we do think our opponent's going to be 5-bet jamming a lot or folding a lot because they don't want to play a 4-bet pot deep out of position, in that case, I like going with a polarized strategy. Polarized strategy would just be 4-betting our very best hands like aces, kings, ace king suited, and then maybe bottom of range, which this hand may fall into it. A hand like queen 8 suited, a hand like king 7 suited, maybe a hand like ace 3 or ace 6 suited or something like that, right? Even though I don't disagree with the 4-bet from Trevor here, I don't particularly love the process. All right, so we have no Cato. Cato considered all the options, did not consider 4-betting, didn't really even consider flatting, and I would almost give this no thoughts, right? Nothing really going on except like I'm gonna 4-bet because it's the end of the night.
25.
And this is the issue that I don't run into when I play my normal 1-3, 2-5s, but we run into it.
Wow, he's come a long way, huh? 1-3 and 2-5s, and now he's playing the nosebleeds, eh?
With the 4-bet, we're kind of handcuffed, especially out of position, to fold our pretty marginable.
Marginable? Is that a word? Marginable. I like it. It's marginable.
I mean, this just plays pretty horribly post. So, and out of position, there's just no reason for us to continue, but you know, just got caught 3-betting blight this time.
Open.
I mean, seems fine. Landon's a strong player, but like I at least want to consider like who's in the blinds. Possibly like we can just take a second to consider who's in the blinds. I know this is a slam dunk open on the button in a 2-blind game, but let's just at least ask the question, right? We're gonna go with no thoughts. I don't want to penalize him too hard for this one because I may just do the same thing here, to be completely honest. But we gotta hold Landon to the same standard of everybody else here.
I feel like Landon on the button here should be opening fairly wide.
Good thought. Good thought. Considering Landon's range.
But in the small blind, we'll just defend and see a flop. It's pretty playable. 3-bet probably makes more sense, but flatting's fine, I think.
Why do we think this? Why do we think? So I'd want to at least like walk through like what happens if we 3-bet, what happens if we flat, like who's behind us? First of all, like is Landon opening too wide? What's going on here that he didn't want to 3-bet this hand? He said 3-bet makes more sense, but I'm probably gonna flat here. To me, guys, this is maybe just a little bit of fear creeping in, right? Like I don't want to play a pot out of position against a good player, a bloated pot out of position, so I'm just gonna call here and keep the pot small.
Just gonna check here.
Okay, cool. This spot, he's gonna have a lot of small pairs and suited cards. If you look at the suits of our hand, we don't block him from having a hand like 6-7 suited or a hand like Ace-7 suited. However, in this spot, I think that he would 3-bet both of those hands, button versus small blind. So we have a nice spot to bet small with our range on this paired board, and probably just fold facing a check raise because we have a lot better hands to continue with, hands that have backdoors, hands that have straight draws, and overpairs, and then obviously trips and 4x. So here we're just going to bet really small. There's about 70 in the pot, so we're just going to go 25 and expect to win a good bit of the time. But if he does raise, we're just going to find fold.
Pretty damn good, guys. I don't really have much to add here. I love how he focused so much on Rampage's range, right? He really starts off with like, what is Rampage's range when he flats in the small blind to a button open? Really, really dialed there. You know, I know he's more of a theory guy, but especially in like a super wide versus wide config, I'm not sure my second thought here would be like, we don't block him having 6-7 suited. It's true, but like when we're playing in like a wide versus wide single raise pot and Ethan may be flatting like 20% of hands here from the small blind, I'm just not sure how relevant it is. But I mean, overall, like I'm nitpicking here. I really like how Landon was focusing on Ethan's range before even thinking about his own hand.
All right, this is where I'm not really too familiar, but with king high on this board, I feel like a lot of the times should be good here.
Huh?
Definitely have more 7s in range.
Huh?
Let's just see if we can try to get him to fold. I mean, I feel like if I call here, it kind of just opens myself to play a pot out of position and kind of, I don't know, I feel like raising here, there's really not a ton of merit to raising.
Well, we could get him to fold a hand like a6.
Because I feel like on a rainbow board, trips are definitely more likely to slow play, but I mean, I just have more of them, so
What is how we gotta go into the beautiful mind here. Where's our beautiful mind? There we go. And like, notice how focused he is on like his own hand and his own range. Like, I have more of this, I have more of that, my hand is this, and we're 30 seconds in here and we haven't even talked about Landon's range, right? Maybe relevant to talk about Landon's range. Like, he opened on the button, he's super wide. If he's just range betting here, how many auto folds is he gonna have? Right? Maybe a relevant thing to start thinking about.
I'm trying to talk myself out of raising, or maybe even out of calling, I'm not entirely sure, but we're kind of thinking king high might be good, so we'll float one and see a turn.
All right, so like, what's the plan here? Like, king high may be good, right? It may be good, like, but if king high is good, do you think a competent player like Landon is just gonna give up on the turn if he can't beat king high? Like, what? I don't really understand the process here.
Okay. Ace high here. We have just enough showdown versus worse offsuit broadways that float, basically trying to hit a pair. And then he might have some backdoor flush draw hands that he's going to try to realize his equity with for as cheap as possible and not really play a check raise. And it makes sense just because he's sure he has some 7x and some 4x as well for like some small suited stuff. But I also just have hands like that in full, where I also just have overpairs and very easy continues. So in this spot, I'm going to check with my showdown, and then depending on what the river is, we might be able to find a bluff. I would check some of my flush draws here too, just in case if a spade does appear. I do actually have some strong hands as well. That's why you can't just always bet your flush draws on the turn. And with ace high, I just have enough showdown to check down if he checks the river as well.
All right, I thought we started off really, really strong here. Again, like super focused on Ethan's range. At the end, I think we're doing a little bit of showing off here. Like I'm going to check some flush draws here as well, so I have some flush draws getting to the sure, Landon. If you're playing against a top tier online guy, you probably want to check back some flush draws here. Correct. So you have some flushes on the river when the turn goes check, check. Sure. But we've heard at this point in early on in his poker career, I'm sure he's much improved at this point, right? Early on in his poker, we're hearing Rampage's thought process here. Do we really think this is the guy we need to be protecting our check back range against? But overall, like really, really solid thoughts from Landon here.
So obviously we see probably the best turn card we can ask for. And him checking back gives us a lot of information where we're probably good here, but given this board, if we're betting, like I don't even know what I get called by, like eights are gonna have to fold.
Why? Why would eights have to fold?
And it just seems fairly unlikely that we're, on the turn at least, that we were behind. So I don't know, we're gonna give him a chance to bluff at it because I don't think we get much value if we were to bet, and just bluff catch pretty much.
This is it, guys. This is it. We're gonna go back to our bad thoughts bingo. And again, we already have it selected. We're gonna select it again. Just really focused on our own hand and range. And this is it, guys. This is the mistake I see time and time again. So many players just get caught up. They think about their own hand, what the board brought in, what we have, where we're at in our range, right? And we don't even think about, we don't even spend a second thinking about what Landon has. And also no Cato, no consider all the options here at all. No ranging, right? We're not doing any of this. What I'd be thinking here in Ethan's spot is, what is Landon's range when he opens the button, c-bets the flop, and checks back the turn? And I want to be able to carry this thread. I want to start doing this on the flop. All right, he opened on the button. He is wide. He may just be c-betting range here. Now he checks back the turn. So what does that mean when he checks back the turn? Well, most likely, he probably has some type of hand that's showdown value, right? If he had a bluff here, if he had a hand that was king high or worse, he'd probably just keep barreling here at a relatively high frequency, right? If he had some type of draw, he'd probably just keep barreling. If he had a very strong hand, he'd probably just keep betting for value. So what does he have when he checks back quite a bit? It's going to be showdown value. So now that we have Landon's range, what happens if we come out and bet here? What does showdown value do? Well, if we choose a reasonable size, showdown value may bluff catch, right? Small pot, showdown value may have checked back the turn to bluff catch the river. What happens if we check here? Well, what's showdown value going to do? Showdown value probably isn't going to bluff. And what does a lot of Landon's air do on the turn? It just bet. So he doesn't have a lot of air. So if we check, this is just going to go check, check a whole hell of a lot. You see what happens when we start thinking about our opponent instead of thinking about ourselves?
Yeah, we just have enough showdown with our hand to check back. And we're going to win versus some worse stuff. We're going to chop with some other ace highs, and I expect that most of the time we're probably going to lose to a small pair, but our hand's too good to bluff. We also have really bad properties of bluff with holding ace of spades, so we're going to check back.
This seems fine. I think it's, again, a little fancy for the player he's playing this pot against. I'm not saying Rampage is a huge fish now, but like at this point in time, you guys can you see what's going on. I think Landon just maybe a little fancy here, but I thought Landon's thought process overall pretty solid. If you're noticing some of these same patterns in your game, focused way too much on your own hand and range, not considering all of the options, a lot of poker training out there, it's really centered on us. It puts us as the hero of the story. Everything is about our hand, our range, how we're perceived. But the truth is, in my opinion, when we're at the table, the story isn't about us. It's about our opponents. What mistakes are they making? Because the mistakes our opponents are making are going to inform our strategy. And if we see our opponent making mistake A, B, and C, well, we can do X, Y, and Z and start exploiting the crap out of them. And that's what our 5-day Basecamp shows you how to do. It's not just more study, how do I play this hand? How do I play my range in a vacuum? No, it's, hey, if my opponent is making these mistakes, how do I go win the most amount of money against this particular opponent? How do I actually exploit them? And I think what makes Basecamp so different is most poker training is akin to an MBA NBA player trying to go on YouTube to practice their hezi or their step back. The passive learning, watching something else, just isn't going to be what an NBA player needs to get to the level where they can actually put it into practice. Same thing for poker players. We want to actually put you in the hot seat. We want to actually make this active learning instead of passive learning, where we are going to drill your thought process just like this. We're going to drill your thought process out loud, just like they did on Poker Out Loud. The only difference is you're going to have us in your ear, giving you feedback in real time, helping you hone this thought process, so the next time you sit down, you feel much more confident about all of these scattered thoughts going through your brain. If this sounds at all appealing, check out our 5-day Basecamp.
All right, once again, we're on the button, probably going to be opening this. It seems a little wide, but we should be able to play it in position just fine. Once again, I'm expecting a 3-bet, and then we'll cross that road when we get there.
Well, I mean, let's just ask. Again, guys, I'd really like to get in the habit of asking, like, what is the stack depth? Who are the players in the blinds? Do we have a skill edge? Are they more likely or less likely to 3-bet when we open, right? Just go through the checklist. Ask the questions.
Definitely sensing some frustration out of Ethan right now. He's definitely had a rough go of it. And while I do like this hand, button versus big blind as a 3-bet, might be kind of nice to flat here and under-rep our hand and play post-flop with Ethan. Either way is fine. Probably better to raise, but we're gonna have some fun and play post with Ethan.
Really like how Johnny is dialed in on what is Ethan doing, what is Rampage doing on the button, right? This guy's opening wide. And I think the one connection that, maybe Johnny was thinking about, but he didn't really get to during this thought process is, like, this guy's frustrated, right? He said this guy's frustrated. So he's probably going to be calling 3-bets wide. So, like, maybe we just want to go, like, really, really linear here. Would rather choose a hand like ace-9, ace-10 suited, a hand like queen-jack suited, hands that are just a little bit better than ace-4 suited to throw into the 3-bet range, right? Because if Ethan isn't folding a hand like ace-8, ace-7 suited, it makes a lot more sense to 3-bet a linear range, a hand like ace-10, ace-9 suited, where we can pip him. If he's not folding a hand like queen-9 suited, it makes a lot more sense to 3-bet a hand like queen-jack, queen-10 suited. So I really like Johnny's thought process here. You can hear him kind of, he's almost there at like why he wants to probably 3-bet a little bit more linear than what the charts say you're supposed to do in this spot. But I like how he's thinking here, really focusing on his opponent instead of himself.
Seeing a lot of paired boards, and
guys, we got like 30-45 seconds to make a decision before people start getting pissed off at us. Seeing a lot of paired boards is probably not the first thought we want to have. I think we have something for this. We have something. We still haven't gotten bingo. Maybe this will be the first hand we get bingo. This brings in seeing a lot of paired boards like this. Okay, there we go. This seems relevant.
queen high here. I feel like sometimes I don't really know if Johnny's going to be 3-betting. I'm just going to assume Johnny's going to be 3-betting a lot of ace-X's when it's big blind versus button. So I feel like effectively sometimes I can serve this queen high holding just like ace high and play it almost exactly like ace high, I guess.
Excuse me? There we go again. Beautiful mind.
I'm kind of making this up as I go, but
Really?
we're gonna once again experiment and bet a pretty small bet on the flop here. Just kind of put pressure on hands worse than mine to maybe make a call or just see what happens. So there's 60. 15 again works. Let's see what happens.
Gonna put pressure on hands worse than his to make a call. So like he's value bet. I don't really understand what's going on. We're focused on our own hand. He did do a little ranging. He talked about Johnny maybe 3-betting some ace high. Okay, fine. My thoughts in Ethan's spot, pretty simple here. This is a wide versus wide configuration. Johnny is probably continuing quite wide to a 3x open from the big blind. Range bets are very hard to play against. Even strong players like Johnny probably are not going to be playing optimally against a small range bet on this board, especially if they don't know you're range betting, right? They just have to find a shit ton of check raises. They're probably not going to find enough check raises. They have a wide range. We benefit from them just folding a bunch of equity on this board. Wouldn't even mind if our opponent just folds a hand hand like 10-9 here. We can get our opponent to fold some better hands, fold some hands that have equity against us. Like, just range bet here. Even a good player isn't going to find enough check raises with the bluffs. And let's start up that thought process on the turn if we have to get there.
Yeah, definitely one of those flops where not much change between pre-flop and post-flop. If I had the best hand pre-flop, I likely have the best hand post-flop. Obviously, my specific hand isn't great for the board. Probably can't call down multiple streets, but for sure calling one, especially for $15, possibly calling two depending on what he does on the turn, but just take it one street at a time. Easy call here.
This seems fine. Would like to see a little more focus on just a tad. Hey, wide versus wide spot. If you see betting range here, he just has a bunch of bullshit. I'm going to be ahead. I think the fact that Johnny is continuing with a weak ace high, no backdoor reflects that, but we'd just like to hear that reflected in the thought process.
I think when he calls this, I feel like now we're just trying to figure out if queen high has enough showdown to check back or bluff at this and continue barreling on the turn.
Enough showdown against what? Queen high? Queen high has enough showdown? I mean, sure, I guess you beat like a jack high, 10 high flush draw here, but not really a lot of showdown with the old queen 8 here in this spot.
Another day and just trying to figure out how light he's calling me and see if there's enough showdown in queen high. I think that's what we're gonna do and just check back. I've realized I don't really do much checking when I'm in position, so this seems like a good time to mix in a check and see what happens on the river.
Why does this seem like a good time to mix in a check? Because you don't do much checking, it seems like a good time to... I don't really understand the line of thought. No, considering all the options, didn't really consider like what would happen if we just keep barreling here. We're not really carrying that thread of what is Johnny's range here when he calls on the flop. In fact, there's almost no ranging here. We're getting close to a bingo, guys. My thoughts in Rampage's spot here would simply be, okay, we see bet small on the flop. He just called. Some, or at least a good portion of a 6x may raise. We don't really have much showdown value here with queen high. He's probably floating the flop relatively wide. And I think there's a few options here on the turn. What happens if we go small? Would our opponent call with a hand like pocket fives, pocket fours here? If we go small, maybe, I'm not sure. Those hands and ace highs may just start folding on this turn, even if we choose a small size. So it could be reasonable. Obviously, king X is never folding. If he does have a trapped trips here, those hands are never folding. May just put in a check raise also now if we go small again. What happens if we go large? Well, obviously, pocket fives, pocket fours, pocket threes, this stuff is just folding. The question I would be asking here is, are we deep enough, and is Johnny the type of guy that we can get a hand like king 9 or king 10 to fold by the river? Because that is the crux here on the turn that I would start to be thinking about. Like, if we overbet this turn, if say we bet 200, 250 on this turn, and a hand like king X calls, pot's gonna be about 600. We're gonna have about 1800, 1850 behind. Do we think if we run the 3x pot on the river that we can get a hand like king 8, king 9, king 10 to fold? If so, I'm highly considering just overbetting on this turn, because I think I'm just going to be able to get 90+% of Johnny's range to fold by the river, especially if he fast plays the 6x at a reasonable frequency on the flop. He's never going to have ace king, probably not going to have king queen. He's not going to have king jack suited. So really, like, the best hand that Johnny has here at a high frequency is a hand like king jack off, king 10 off, king 9 suited. And if we think we can get some of these hands to fold by the river and he doesn't have much 6x, may just start applying all of the pressure right now. So that's what I'm thinking about. I'm already planning ahead if I'm in Rampage's spot right here.
Considering check back the turn, it's toss up whether or not I have the best hand here. I don't want to lead the river though. I think that he's definitely not in the mood to fold a hand that's better than mine, and my hand has just enough showdown value that I can check and expect him to check back a reasonable amount of time, and we can actually win the spot. If I check and he bets, we'll talk if that happens.
This is pretty damn good, guys. Notice Johnny considering all the options here. What happens if I bet? Well, he's probably not going to fold a hand better than mine. What happens if I check? I think he's going to check back at a reasonable frequency. And what happens if I check and he bets? Well, then we could talk about it. Johnny already probably thinking about, well, he's probably relatively capped when he c-bets a flop small and then checks back the turn. Maybe we could do something devious if we check here and he bets. But if we check and he checks back, maybe we're just sometimes good. Really dialed in thought process from Johnny on this river. That's one of the strongest I've seen in this series so far.
I don't know why in my head I kind of wished he would bet at this so I can raise it, since I do hold an 8 and I guess block the nuts straight.
Irrelevant blockers. There we go.
Considering now that he checked it back, I don't know if my line makes any sense to just fire just any amount to hope that he folds here. I guess I'm just hoping queen high is good, because I don't know if any pair is going to be folding to a river bet, because that line just makes no sense.
Why does it make no sense? Why couldn't he check back the turn with a hand like pocket queens or pocket jacks or even a weak king, a hand like king 4 suited and value bet on the river? Why wouldn't that make sense?
Yeah, we're not really repping any value or strength here, so we're going to check back and hope we're good.
I mean, if I'm in Rampage's spot, the question I'm asking, first of all, is what is my opponent's range? Do we beat anything if we have queen high? And my first thought here is no, because what does Johnny do? Johnny's a strong player. We've heard his thought process, right? What does Johnny come out and do? If Johnny has a bricked jack high flush draw on this river, what does he come out and do? If he's got jack high, he probably just comes out and bluffs. So when we have queen high here, are we ever good? No. So now the question I'm asking is, first of all, what is Johnny's range? Probably got a bunch of showdown value. If he had trips to trap the flop, probably just comes out and bets here at some frequency. King X, at least a strong King X, may just come out and bet here. So the one question I would like to ask here is, what would I do with the inverse, right? If I'm in Rampage's spot and I do have a hand like pocket queens, or I do have a hand like king 5 suited, what size would I bet on this river if Johnny flipped over a hand like, I don't know, pocket 5s or 5-7 of hearts? What size would I bet to try to get third pair or fourth pair or an under pair on this board to call? Probably would have to go relatively small here. I don't know, maybe $40, $50, something like that. If we go bigger than that, what may happen? Well, pocket 5s may start folding. 7x of hearts may start folding, right? And if that's the case, if we think those hands are gonna fold, if we have pocket queens here, what should we do when we have queen 8 offsuit? We should probably choose a slightly larger size than that and bluff and get those hands to fold. At least like, and maybe we don't think that's ever happening. Maybe Johnny's just checking on this river and maybe he's just never folding a hand like pocket 5s, which I don't believe, but I'm just gonna play along with it for a second. I still wanna consider the option, because then the exploit here is in this spot. Whenever Rampage has pocket queens or whenever he has king 5 suited, if Johnny's never folding pocket 5s or 5-7, overbet the river, go 300, go 400, go 500 on the river. For goodness sakes, right? For goodness sake. Why did I say for goodness sakes? These are the questions I want to be considering on this river. All right, so I think we get a little bit of fear-based thinking on this river. Not sure I really heard the shiny objects. We already had the irrelevant blockers, but man, we are so close to a bingo. I don't think we're gonna get it in this hand. All right, no thoughts from Marley here. I mean, it's fine. It's a standard open. I thought we're playing poker out loud. We at least want to hear something here. I'd be considering who's on the button behind me. Are they active? Are they 3-betting quite a bit? Who's in the blinds? I'd be opening a little bit wider. Again, if the blinds are weak, I'd be opening a little bit tighter. If the blinds are stronger players, again, like we're always opening queen jack here. But I at least like to get in the habit of having the thoughts.
Definitely another hand that I want to play. I have yet to flat the button, and this could be a decent spot for it, but I'm going to continue with the theme of 3-betting. I've been doing it enough, and my hand is suited. We obviously have ace high, so going to continue with it and 3-bet it up to 100.
All right, Johnny here. I think we've been very kind to old Johnny so far. I think a little bit too focused on his own hand and his own range here. What I'd be asking in Johnny's spot here is, what are my incentives? Who do I want to play a pot against? Am I trying to isolate Marley and play a 3-bet pot heads up in position? Who's in the blinds, right? If there's a very weak player in the blinds, maybe I want to flat quite a bit here. Let that player in. Let them make a mistake post flop when I'm going to have absolute position. If there's a strong player in the blind, maybe Landon's in the blinds here. Maybe Landon's in the small blind and he's going to be 3-betting the pants off me. Well, then I'm incentivized to play more 3-bet or fold, right? So these are the things I'd like to consider if I'm Johnny in the spot.
So it's pretty interesting to wake up with a hand in this dynamic immediately after 4-betting light in a very similar configuration. Really no reason not to 4-bet this hand. And we're going to be going bigger now out of position. Don't need to quite go 3x, I don't think. I think something like 2.7 and then calling off is pretty reasonable. So that's what we're going to do.
Yes, so we do have him bet. in the small blind here who is a solid player. So if I'm Johnny, I do like the 3-better fold on the button there with a solid player in the small blind who's going to be doing quite a bit of squeezing. We see Matt wakes up with a real hand here. Little quibbles with Matt's process here. One, I know he didn't consider all the options. I'm not going to necessarily fault him for this because I generally, especially from out of position here, when somebody opens and somebody 3-bets, I'm just playing 4-better fold. I'm never considering flatting here. So I'm not gonna nitpick Matt for this. The one thing I would push a little bit more on is sizing, right? Like, what is the effective stack depth? And I think that's going to inform my sizing a little bit more from out of position. Also, right, how linear am I going in the spot? How wide am I going for value when I'm playing 4-better fold? What is my actual 4-better fold range, right? The more linear we're going in this spot, right, technically, in theory, probably the smaller our size. And if we're going to be playing for some reason a polarized 4-bet strategy, maybe we have some flats here, then we probably want to go with a larger size. Sounds like Matt is playing 4-bet or fold, but just a couple little nitpicks, maybe some of the things I'd be thinking about before I chose my sizing.
Is it Groundhog Day? The same thing keeps happening over and over again. I literally don't know what's going on. I was actually going to call just because, you know, I'm getting a little curious, but now I'll fold.
Maybe just a little complaining, like, what is it? Groundhog's Day. Not really sure what this adds, but I'm not above it. I don't fault Marley for this. Every time she opens, she's getting 3-bet and 4-bet. So I don't fault her. It isn't necessarily the best thought, even though I'm guilty of having these from time to time myself.
Definitely an interesting dynamic in play with this being a second consecutive hand. Also him using a fairly small sizing here. Giving me a very attractive price on the button with the suited ace. 200 big blinds deep. Just can't really find a fold here, but I'm definitely going to have to be very careful post-flop navigating even ace-high boards. So we'll toss it in and see if we can figure it out post.
Relatively decent thoughts from Johnny again. The one thing I want to add is, like, what is my opponent's range when he cold 4-bets, right? I just want to consider, like, what is the bottom of his range? Like, what's the worst pocket pair we think he's cold 4-betting, right? Maybe a hand like 9s, 10s, maybe even jacks, right? I want to ask the question, like, does he have any flats? Does he have any cold calls to the 3-bet? Or is he playing 4-bet or fold? Because that's really going to inform his range. And then finally, against a solid player like Matt, I wouldn't be doing this against a fish, but against a solid player like Matt, I want to consider, like, what is my strategy versus a 4-bet, right? Do I want to have any 5-bets here? And generally, when deep, especially in position, if I'm against a solid player, I just don't have a 5-bet range. Makes me a little bit tougher to play against. If I'm only ever continuing as a call or a fold here, right? If I have aces, I'm calling. I got kings, I'm calling. I got queens, I'm calling, right? That makes me much harder to play against. And the reason why I do this against solid players is because really the only hand that feels comfortable 5-bet stacking off here for value is aces. So therefore it becomes really, really hard to play kind of this balanced 5-bet range. I know I'm going really, really into the weeds here. You don't really need to worry about this if you're not playing against a solid player like Matt. If you're just playing in your local 2-5 game, throw this out the window, right? 5-bet aces, don't 5-bet anything else. It doesn't matter. They're not going to fold, especially when they cold 4-bet. But against a solid player, against a reg, these are the things, like the little tiny sprinkles of nuance that I want to add on top. A lot of players try to add these thoughts when they're not relevant, right? When they're playing against Big Joe in seat 3, who doesn't even know how to spell range, right? The only time we really need to bring this stuff in is when we are playing against a solid, studied player.
So this board is pretty interesting because we definitely have an advantage, but Johnny probably has more of the nuts than we do.
See, like, I don't know if this is true, right? The first question I'd be asking if I'm Matt here is, like, what is my opponent's strategy when I cold 4-bet? Like, does he have any 5-bets here? Maybe. I don't know. And if he doesn't have any 5-bets, we absolutely do not have an advantage here. So, right, like, really taking into account what is his range before making these proclamations. I don't know if I want to give him no range, because I think he's trying to range here. I think maybe he's just a little off.
I probably don't cold for queen jack a whole lot, but I can have aces, kings, 10s. You can probably have 10s for sure. I'm not sure if he's just ripping in with kings plus, but I think probably in this configuration he does. We are reasonably deep though, so I don't want to completely discount those. But with ace king,
there we go. Okay, some better thoughts here.
We can discount those pretty heavily.
I'm not.
I think that given the nature of the board and that we're one card away from potentially having a 4-liner, we can just pretty much go for a size that allows us to go somewhat small on flop, jam turn, I think. I think he has about 16 and change, maybe 17. So actually I could be wrong. Pot's about 570. So actually it's going to be pretty hard to get it in on 2 streets actually. I think given that that's the case, we still probably want to go for all 3 here. And probably start off with around 30% sizing to size up turn and river, assuming that they're not terrible cards. So into 540, I'm going to bet 175.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually pretty reasonable for Matt here. The one thing, I have this shortcut in 4-bet pots, especially against solid players. Like, if I'm in Matt's spot, I'm playing against a good player like Johnny, out of position. My default on most boards in a 4-bet pot is just quarter pot, right? I'm just going with quarter pot. There are some boards that I deviate. Sometimes on these ace-high boards, right, I will go 10% pot. Don't really want to get too into the weeds on this, but in general, I think we can't really be making a huge mistake. If our general strategy in a 4-bet pot out of position against a good reg is quarter pot on the flop, quarter pot on the turn, and then we jam the river for value, right? This is quarter jam. If we just put this down, this is kind of my default in these 4-bet pots against good players. Against fish, I'm just doing what my hand wants to do. But Johnny, obviously not a fish. We've seen his thought process. He is a very solid player.
I bet 175 into almost $600. Obviously we have a call here, but it's unfortunate that he does hold an advantage of it over us with the range.
See, again, I'm not sure this is true either, unless Johnny has 5 bets here. We still haven't figured that part out.
It's going to be tough for us to call down, but given the fact that this is a 4-bet pot, obviously he has ace-king, he has aces, he has kings, he has 10s. I can have some queen-jacks here. He obviously doesn't have as many of those. I don't think that he can just bomb with impunity here because I definitely have some slow plays pre-flop.
There we go.
So I expect him to be fairly straight up with this one in a 4-bet pot. So I think we can safely call and evaluate turn. Hopefully we get lucky and hit a 6 or maybe turn to diamond, make our job a little easier, but for now we have a call.
Seemed pretty good, pretty clean to me. I could nitpick, but I don't really have many notes. I think Johnny's doing quite well.
So this is one of those cards that obviously changes. It doesn't change the nuts per se, but it makes the nuts a lot easier to have.
All right. Well, we just wasted 20 seconds on that. What do we got here? This brings in. There we go.
I don't know exactly what Johnny's 3-bet construction looks like. It looks like here if it includes, hands like Jack 10 suited, Queen Jack suited, would make a lot of sense here, and that makes this card especially bad because he can absolutely call flop with exactly those hands. He doesn't need to raise any of those hands. So for my range overall, I won't have a whole lot of Jack X here. I could maybe have Ace Jack suited, King Jack suited at some frequency, but besides that, I don't have Broadway a whole lot. So this is a pretty bad card, and one I probably am just forced to check and not really get 3 streets of value on this hand, even when I'm ahead. He also has Ace Jack in range. It's hard to know how much Jack X he does have, but it's probably a fair bit. So I think that we have to go into check mode here, and I'm honestly not that confident about at this SPR or what we can realistically do as far as ever getting away from this hand. It feels sort of impossible given how high up in range I am when I don't have a lot of jacks in range. But I do have sets, so it's a little bit unclear to me how wide I'm going to go. But I think that I want to be checking here and potentially getting one more street later, potentially getting to showdown, depending on what the action is.
Yeah, so this is one spot. This is a pretty complex spot. What I'd be thinking in Matt's situation here, I think he summarized this actually pretty well. It took a while to get there, but I think he summarized this pretty well. I'd just be thinking against a good player in Johnny's spot. Like, he has more Jack X. I don't really have any Jack X except pocket Jacks, Ace Jack suited, maybe King Jack suited. Johnny has a lot more Jack X. So in this spot, I'm probably just checking my entire range. One interesting thing Matt said, he's like pretty high up in his range. I actually don't think he's that high up in his range because Matt has pure here. He's got aces pure. He's got kings pure. Assuming he's range betting the flop, he's got queens and tens pure here. He also has jacks pure. Like, ace king is probably like this is a mistake that I think a lot of players make. Like, when the ranges are so tight, the configuration is so tight, ace king is definitely not one of the best hands that Matt gets here with. It's probably in the bottom 50%, I would guess, of the hands that Matt gets here with. I don't know the exact Matt, don't hold me to this, but like, it's just definitely not one of the best. Either way, I thought Matt's thought process here was relatively solid.
This is a very, very interesting turn card because it's clear that he does not have very many jacks here. Given that he 4-bet pre-flop, the ranges are pretty narrow, meaning that he probably has a hand like ace king, pocket kings.
You see this, man? Johnny just dialed. Johnny is dialed on what his opponent has.
Queen, and with the SPR being that there's about 700 in the pot, and I have about
Misreads the pot size a little. I know I'm guilty of this quite a bit myself, but pretty good thoughts overall so far.
1600 behind. I can't really bet here on the turn and expect him to fold any sets or two pairs. So what I can do is, because I hold more jacks in my hand, I can turn my hand into a bluff and move it all in for over a 2x pot shove and put him to the test with two pair or set. It's pretty likely that he has two pair or set here. So it's just a question of whether or not he's willing to fold those hands. And because I possess a lot of jacks in my hand that would call the flop, that would take this line, I think that he's going to find a fold enough times for me to make this play profitable. And if not, we can always hit the diamond on the river and get super lucky. We definitely hopefully don't reach to that point, but I feel fairly confident that we're going to have more jacks here and that he's going to be in a tough spot. And I think he's going to call probably 30% of the time, but we'll see. All in.
It just fucking beautiful. Just that this is great. This is good poker, guys. This is what good poker looks like. Turning top pair into a bluff in a 4-bet pot.
Okay, so I mean this isn't shocking to see him press this. Can I get a count on that, please? I mean, for all the reasons I said before, he should have a lot more jack X in range. Like 11, a hair under 12.
1685.
Oh, 1685. Right, so there's about 920 in the pot or something like that. So this is like a little under 2x pot. My initial gut reaction is that he's just trying to really attack what is a pretty strong range of mine with his jack X for value. When I try to put him on a range here that includes bluffs, it's pretty challenging. I think that most of his hands in range that I beat would not pick this size for value. Hands like ace queen should want to navigate to showdown as well. Hands like ace 10, if he ever has like queen 10, king 10 suited, those types of hands.
Those hands are actually pretty good bluffing opportunities, because if Johnny does have a hand like king 10 or queen 10 in this spot, like what does he actually beat, right? What does he beat? Nothing. Ace 5 suited, I guess, occasionally, if Matt even cold 4-bets that hand, which I'm not sure he does. King 10 and queen 10 don't really beat anything, right? The bottom of Matt's range here is probably a hand like king queen suited.
Those hands don't really want to do this, so I don't think we're beating value against this sizing. It's pretty polarized to a jack or nothing. And when I think about what his nothing hands are, I definitely am kind of struggling, because he has a few hands in range that are 3-bets pre, can call a 4-bet, that are like suited connectors. But when the board is ace king 10 rainbow, I don't think any of those types of holdings really peel here. When you look at the arrangement of the cards on the flop, like there's no gutters that don't get there unless they pretty much like make 2 pair.
Yeah, 2 pairs should be the bluffs from Johnny, right? Johnny, I think, should be finding some bluffs here with 2 pair.
But like 9-8 suited that comes in and now decides to just go nuts. There are a few hands I could manufacture for sure. Hands like, you know, maybe pocket 9s peels the flop 1 time.
Seems like a stretch.
But I don't even know if Johnny 3-bets those rather than calling pre.
I mean, I think it's much more likely that he 3-bets a hand like pocket 9s and he floats the flop with 9s on an ace-king-10 board in a cold 4-bet pot.
So the other issue here is like when I am behind, I'm just basically dead. I have 4 outs if I'm behind. So it's really like, do I have enough information to ever just like soul read here and make a super light call? Because this is effectively a really light call if I call. I don't think there is enough information here to suggest that I can be good nearly often enough against like a 2x sizing to call here. As much as it sucks to have basically the absolute top of my range pre and like basically the top of my range on flop.
I think this is a big mistake that even like more advanced players make. We're not top of range here. Again, the worst hand that Matt probably has here is a hand like king queen, right? And then a hand like ace queen. And then the third worst hand he's got here is probably a hand like ace king, right? I don't even know if he has ace 10 or ace 5 pre-flop. So like ace king is near the bottom of Matt's range in this spot, right? Or at least in like the bottom third. He's got 10s, he's got aces, he's got kings, he's got queens, he's got jacks, right? He's got ace jack, right? This is one of the worst hands he has in this spot. I think the takeaway here is this is a little bit more complex, this is a little bit more advanced, but as ranges get tighter, players have a very hard time, even good players, have a very hard time folding hands that are absolute strength hands, right? Top 2 pair looks like a very strong hand here, but when we zoom out, it's actually near the bottom of Matt's range.
I think that this is all adding up to he's just allowed to do this with a pretty high fraction of his range because the value part of his range is so strong, and the part of his range that isn't straights would just never do this for value. So I kind of hate myself because I really, really hate folding, but I'm gonna let it go.
Really well played hand from Johnny in this spot. All right, we still haven't gotten a bad thoughts bingo, guys. Maybe this will be the hand.
All right, so we finally have a holding that we can raise and defend from a 3-bet, so it's about time. Feel like, I don't know. It's about time we actually have a playable hand, I guess.
To me, maybe this classified as complaining a little bit. It's about time we have a playable hand. Again, pre-flop, guys, always thinking about who's behind me, who's in the blinds. This is going to inform how wide or how tight I open. This is going to inform the sizing I use. Even if we have a slam dunk open from the hijack here, still want to get in the habit of always having these thoughts.
Pretty weak hand to defend here versus this position, but that's a flop.
All right, I'd consider this just no thoughts here. What I'd be thinking about here is how deep are we and do we have an edge against this player? The deeper we are, the wider we can continue. The bigger the skill edge we have on the player in position, the wider we can continue. Again, just gonna be really, really hard if the player in position is competent and we're not super, super, super deep to be able to call with a hand like this and have any type of edge post flop.
Jack.
All right, so I feel like Trevor's range defending the big blind's got to be pretty wide.
Pretty good. Start with Trevor.
Obviously, on this board, we're sitting pretty well. We've bluffed a lot against him, and we're just going to use the consistent sizing of like around 1/3 pot, which would be, what, 60? It should be like 20, and hope to, see what happens. Just go for value.
Not all that bad here from Rampage. Not all that bad. Just nitpicking a little. My thoughts would just be, okay, what's the biggest size we can choose here on the flop where our opponent's going to call with the weak stuff and raise the strong stuff? Usually the thought I am having here on the flop against 99% of players, unless they are a wizard or an in-boss or something like that.
This board texture is a board texture I expect him to bet with a high frequency on. I'll have a lot of pairs between the 3 and the queen to bet, as well as having king, queen, queen, jack, queen 10.
We're just way too zoomed into the weeds here. Way too zoomed in already. Like he opened from the hijack. He has a bunch of hands. Okay.
And then he'll have king, jack, king 10, all the unpaired bluff hands. With my hand, I have an easy call with ace high and having gutter ball, so I'm gonna suit him.
We just like to consider all of the options here. If I'm Trevor in this situation, we just like to consider, you know, what happens if I raise? If my opponent is just c-betting too much on this board, what happens if I raise? Am I going to be able to just get a bunch of folds right now, or at least like get a call and then get a bunch of folds on the turn? Would like to at least consider exploring it, even if we decide it's not the best option.
This 3 is a card that I could consider leading because I'm going to have way more 3s than he will, defending from the big blind versus his open. I'm more likely to lead the middle card pairing if it's a higher card, like an 8 or a 9 or a 10, somewhere like that. I still could lead this card, and having the ace of diamonds in my hand would make it good to do so.
Sure. Where is it, guys? Where is it? There we go.
But I'm going to check here and then decide. I think he's going to check back here quite a bit. We'll get to realize our equity. Might have the best hand a decent amount. I just don't expect him to barrel this card too often. So I think we'll just get check through and then see what happens on the river.
All right, what I'm considering here from Trevor's spot is just how do I maximize fold equity, right? How do I maximize fold equity? Donking tends to minimize fold equity. If Rampage does have a hand like Queen X or an overpair in this situation, like coming out and donking and then betting the river, just minimize, he's just gonna call down, right? How do we maximize fold equity? We go for the check raise. Our hand is a semi-bluff here. We want to maximize fold equity. How do we do that? What's the best way to do that? Like, that's what I'm thinking about here. And again, we don't have much information on Rampage's range yet. If we check here, we're gonna get a lot more information. If he double barrels, really gonna bifurcate. I like that word, bifurcate. Every time I say that word, I like it, bifurcate. Really gonna bifurcate the range further. It's really gonna be like Queen X plus for value. And then also, obviously, a lot of bluffs here. Probably not gonna be like showdown value hands like 9s, 10s, jacks, ace high, that type of stuff if he does check back. Probably not gonna be the showdown value type of stuff if he does double barrel on the turn. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about from Trevor's perspective here.
I think after looking at this right now, the 3 seems like a pretty terrible card for us.
Why?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of his calling ranges would be like middle pair sometimes, like a 3x holding, or some hand that doesn't love this 3 either. I mean, 4-5 would probably continue, but I think right now with Queen Jack, we have a hand that can get 2 streets of value. Also, what's going on in my head is how in the last hand I played against Trevor with the 10 high, I'm gonna take the exact same line where I had nothing and check back turn, and here I have top pair and I can check back turn and play a little bit more deceptively, but
why? I mean, like, why? Why are we getting into this like meta game? Like, let's just do what our hand wants to do. Listen, you hear Trevor's thoughts here. Trevor's not thinking,
you know what? In the last hand, Rampage checked back with a bluff on the turn with nothing. So if he checks back here, then he has nothing. I know he has nothing.
Nobody else is thinking about this. Like, getting so caught up in ourselves. Again, the other one here, our own hand, our own range, getting caught up, making ourselves the hero of the story. This is the mistake, guys, that I see time and time and time again. It's one of the biggest mistakes that I see repeated by players. They're just so caught up in their own story, in their own hand, in their own range.
Overall, I think with this 3 of diamonds here, it's a mix of deception, maybe a little bit of pot control as well, but maybe we can get him to bluff on the river, but we're gonna go and check this.
I mean, the other question I'm asking from Ethan's spot here is, he says, okay, this obviously is not a 3-street hand, it's a 2-street hand. Okay, I can accept that. But what he's basically saying then is that he believes that Trevor's going to fold hands like Queen 9 suited, Queen 8 suited. He's going to fold hands like pocket 8s, pocket 9s to a triple barrel at a very high frequency. If that's the case, right? If Queen Jack is not a 3-street hand here because he believes Trevor's going to fold hands like 9s, 8s, weak Queen X to a triple, what does that mean we should be doing when we're bluffing? We just need to be able to carry that logical thread, right? So the next time we're bluffing in this situation, if we think Queen Jack's only a 2-street hand, what do we do with our bluffs? And if when we get here with a bluff, what happens is I see a lot of players, they get here with a bluff, right? They get here with 5-6 or something on this turn and they just give up because they're like,
well, my opponent, has some Queen X. They just have they're probably not going to believe me when they have pocket 9s here. They're probably just going to call me down.
And right, both of these things can't be true. It's like we just have to hold ourselves logically consistent in this spot.
Now I'm in this situation where I have to decide whether I want to turn my hand into a bluff or if I want to check and just show down, hopefully beat some of his unpaired hands. The good thing about turning my hand into a bluff is I can get some folds from hands like maybe 4s, 5s, and 6s. And I'd rather have some of the other floats that I'd have, like
some like 10-9s and Jack-10s that have backdoor flush draws as my bluffs, and then just have this as a showdown hand, and expect to win if he checks back with a pretty good frequency. He might have some better ace highs occasionally, which I could fold out if I bluff, but I don't think I need to bluff this combination. So.
You don't? Like what? Like he opened from the hijack. That's the one thing I'd want to be considering here. There's just really not much ranging going on here. Just not much ranging going on. And I really want to be carrying that thread of what is Rampage's range when he c-bets the flop and checks back the turn, right? Like what's he gonna do on the turn at a reasonable frequency if he does have a hand like king high or jack high? I know we heard him say that he checked back 10 high, so I don't know. Maybe he does check back 10 high. I don't know. But what do most players do if they get to the turn with nothing? They get to the turn with 4-5, they get to the turn with 5-6, they get to the turn with the backdoor diamond draw, they probably just keep barreling. And like maybe against a button open, maybe we've got a little bit more showdown value here, but against a hijack open, like do we really have showdown value with ace high? So what I'd really like to hear from Trevor's perspective here is, first of all, what is Ethan's range and what happens if, right? What happens if we come out and bet small? What happens if we come out and bet large? What happens if we check? Just consider all the options. You heard he kind of came to a decision. This hand has showdown value. I want to check here, instead of just walking through the decision tree. And he may end up coming to the same decision, but it can't hurt to walk through that tree. Can't hurt to walk through that tree.
All right, well, now that he's checked all 3 times, we're pretty confident we have the best hand.
Really?
Now it's just what kind of sizing to put out for value, and I want to go a little bit bigger. I mean, they've all seen me overbet pot with 8 high, multi-way.
Again, we're getting into the metagame. They've all seen me. Is anybody like really thinking about this here?
Now, expecting our hand to be good here all the time. We're just trying to target, like, I don't even know what hands we can get a hero call from. Maybe 5s, 6s, 8s, maybe. But I feel like if we can get big, we can either get a snap call or a hero call. So we'll go to 125.
All right, the one thing I'd like to hear from Ethan's perspective here is he says, you know, like maybe we can call by like 5s, 8s. He does a little bit of ranging here, but I'd like to be a little bit more precise about the ranging. Like, what is our opponent's range? Like, he's not carrying the thread, right? He's not carrying the thread. We need to start. When our opponent check calls on the flop, what is his range? Well, my opponent probably has some, you know, some showdown value, some pairs between the 5s and the queen, probably has some 3x, some deuce x, some queen x, right? We need to start on the flop with what is his range and then carry it through to the turn in the river. Well, the turn goes check, check, so his range is the same. And now he comes out and checks the river. Does that change his range? Probably. Why? Because, well, some of the 3x may just come out and bet here. Some of his air may just come out and bet here. Some of the queen x may just come out and bet here. So if he's going to come out and bet with those hands at a reasonable frequency, maybe not all the time, but a reasonable frequency, how does that impact Trevor's range on this river? Well, that probably means he doesn't really have a lot of air because those hands just come out and bluff. He doesn't really have a lot of super strong hands because those just come out and bet. So what does he have? Quite a lot of showdown value. So the pot is small, and if our opponent flipped over a hand like pocket 8s, like Ethan said here, what size would you go to get pocket 8s to fold if you got to this river with 10 high somehow, right? Pretend you're in Ethan's spot and you have a hand like 10-9 of spades that check back the turn because you have nothing going on, right? What size do you bet with 10-9 of spades if Trevor flips over pocket 8s to try to get that hand to fold? Probably relatively big, right? Maybe 200, 250, something like that. Is pocket 8s even folding for that size, right? So I like Ethan's decision to choose a big size for value on this river because I don't think a hand like 8s, 9s, 6s is folding at a reasonable frequency here, but I just want to hear him be able to carry that thread of what is Trevor's range from street to street to street instead of starting from scratch on the river. Here we go. No carrying the thread.
1 1/4.
So facing bet check bet line, the hands that I can call with on river.
The hands that you can call with, there's no one holding a gun to your head. I think we're gonna, he says can, but this is close to the have and need, and look at that. We get it, guys. We got it. We got it. We got the bad thoughts bingo. I know I bent it a little bit, but I think this is close enough. The hands that he can call with, no one's holding a musket to your head, Trevor. You're allowed to call with whatever you'd like. If you think he's bluffing, you can call with anything.
Well, I can have some really strong hands that I'm deciding to go with check raise with.
I don't know how that's relevant.
And then I have some pairs that I can call. Some flop floats that might contain 7, like ace-7, that are easy check calls.
Really? You're gonna float the flop with ace-7?
And it's like not great in this situation. Now it just depends on what we think he's going to bet, check, bet with for value.
There we go. It took us about 45 seconds. Now we're finally talking about what does Ethan have.
He could definitely have some of the weaker queens here, like queen 10, queen 9 suited. Just kind of an interesting spot to be in here. And I think I'm going to fold.
You know, I read Super System, and it said that when you win a pot, you should play the next pot. And then I get dealt the Doyle suited the very next hand. So we're going to go for it here, and we're going to do it big, baby.
I think Berkey gets a pass here, Pre.
I think we can call or 3-bet.
Yes, you certainly can.
I am just going to call because man does pretty well post-flop.
So what I'm considering from Melissa's perspective here is, what are my hand's incentives, right? Like, am I closing the action? Is there a player behind me? Do I want to shut this player out of the pot? Do I want to play a 3-bet pot heads up? Am I going to have a skill edge on Berkey? Is Berkey going to have a skill edge on me? How deep am I? Right? These are the questions I want to be asking here. Even if I have a weak player behind me, do I want to just flat here and let that player in? Because if I let that player in, I'm going to have the worst relative position post-flop, right? If I check and say the straddle calls here, and now the action naturally just goes to Berkey. Berkey c-bets, and I'm going to be next to act, kind of monkey in the middle here. So do I really want to be doing any flatting from this position if someone is straddling in this position? Those are the questions I'm asking from Melissa's spot.
What's the party?
No real thoughts here from Conrad. No Cato from Melissa here.
Check. All right, this is how you start a rush. We definitely need some 10s in our check back range. Feel most inclined to start checking our weakest 10s. Since we actually have 10 deuce, I would say that qualifies. Would prefer to obviously have a spade in hand, but this is a pretty dynamic texture. Funneling money in with medium pairs here is just going to be costly, so we'll check back.
I think maybe a little bit too focused on like what his range wants to do. Is this really the primary concern? Maybe if we're playing a pot against Johnny here, we're playing a pot against Landon, I may be considering this type of stuff. But in this position, I'm probably just thinking like, what are my hand's incentives? What do I want to do? And right, like I'm probably also checking back here, but just the process of getting there just slightly different in this particular spot.
So after flop checks around, I think I need to start betting here.
You don't have to do anything. Go to our bad thoughts bingo. You don't have to.
I don't think I need to go too big, especially multi-way. Probably something like $60.
That's 60.
So from Melissa's perspective, I want to consider all the options. I also want to start ranging here. Conrad, obviously, just going to have a wide range. We don't really know too much about his range. He's uncapped. Berkey here, though, obviously, we do know something about his range because he checked back the flop on a wet dynamic board in position. Is he going to be checking back super strong hands here? Multi-way in position? Probably not. So we know something about Berkey's range, and I'd want to start considering all the options here, right? Like, what happens if I bet small? What happens if I bet large? What happens if I check? Is this board going to be likely to get stabbed on the turn? I'd be weighing these things if I was Melissa instead of just coming out and saying, well, you know what? I have to bet because I have a good hand.
Berkey wasn't behind me. I think I'm raising here.
If Berkey wasn't behind me, I think about raising here. How is Berkey relevant? This is a little bit of fear-based thinking, I do believe. And also just like no thoughts really on like what is Melissa's range, right? What is Berkey's range? Like really just no thoughts going on what is actually happening here. No ranging. Where is no thoughts? Do we have no thoughts on here? Nah, we already got it checked. What do you know?
I'm pretty happy Conrad called because I think that we would have had to fold even to Melissa's stab here. That particular card just demolishes us. I don't expect too much 9x to be leading with this size. Maybe a little bit of 9-8, queen 9. I'm not real sure. Unlikely though. Anyway, we have a quick fold.
Pretty solid from Berkey here. You see him just getting away from second pair right here, right now on the turn once Melissa comes out and bets and Conrad calls.
There's a lot of draws. Can of course have some 7-8. I think that he probably wants to do a little raising with that. So that leaves a lot of one pair check back hands, 9x, 10x, and then some bluffs like queen. I'm gonna check and try and see if we can get a bet.
All right, so she does do a little bit of ranging here. Again, no Kato. Really no considering all the options in this spot. So what I'd be thinking from Melissa's perspective, again, what is Conrad's range? Probably going to have some showdown value, right? Probably going to have some Jack X, going to have some 10X, 9X, maybe some draws as well. And then so what happens if? What happens if we check here? Is he going to bluff if he has a brick draw, right? If he has a brick spade draw, is he going to bluff? If he has a blicked straight draw, if he has a blicked straight draw, is he going to bluff here? And if so, then checking could be a reasonable option if we think he's going to bluff with his 8X, his Queen X, his busted spades. Yep, possibly. But then also, like, what happens if we bet small? Well, all of his showdown value probably is going to call, and the missed draws probably fold. What happens if we go large here? Well, lots of draws bricked, right? Bunch of straight draws bricked, bunch of flush draws bricked. If we go large here, what is Conrad doing with a hand like a weak Jack X? If he's got a hand like Jack 8 or Jack 7 suited, if he's got a hand like Ace 10 here, what's he doing with those hands if we go large? And the way I like to keep myself logically consistent, you guys probably know, like to ask the inverse question. So if we're in Melissa's spot here, we get to this river with a hand like Ace Deuce of Spades or something like that. We get here with a bricked draw, and Conrad flips over a hand like Ace 10 or Jack 8 suited. What size would we go if we had Ace Deuce of Spades in Melissa's shoes to try to get 10X to fold or a weak Jack to fold? We probably have to go very, very big, right? With all these draws bricking. Pot's 275. We may have to go 600, 700, maybe even larger. So what does that tell us when we have value in this spot? Well, probably can go an overbet for value here and still get called by a 10, still get called by a worse Jack, right? Maybe he can go 350, 400, maybe even 450 and still get called. So now I'm weighing between checking here and betting. And what would make this decision easy for me, knowing a little bit more about my opponent. Is Conrad the type who's going to always bluff with no showdown value when we check? If so, maybe checking here is a better option. Is this a guy who maybe just gets a little bit squeamish and checks back some of his air? In that case, just going with the overbet going to be a better option. But these are the things I'm thinking about. These are the things I want to weigh before coming to a decision.
I really hate that check right there, because that means he probably just has showdown value and bet a hand like Queen 10 on the turn or Queen Jack, and this really sucks, and there is no bluffing here because I'm just gonna get snapped off. Yeah, whatever. Just gonna check back here and lose.
We see here he checks back with a pair of sixes, which I guess is reasonable, but he does a pretty decent job of ranging. But I want to add that inverse question. If Melissa flipped over a hand like Queen 10, what size would we bet to get her to call? If we had a Jack here, if we're in Conrad's spot and we got King Jack, what size are we betting to get Melissa to call with a hand like Queen 10 or Queen Jack, right? What size are we going? I just want to consider it, right? I want to consider it because I want to know, is it possible to bluff here? And maybe it's not, right? She's just checking a check call all the time, but I at least want to ask the question. All right, guys, if you feel like right now, if you sat down at this table, you'd be like some of these players and you just be muttering out a bunch of gobbledygook that doesn't make any sense or isn't relevant to what's actually going on in the hand you're playing, that's what our 5-day base camp was built to fix. So if any of that is all interesting, check out the 5-day base camp. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and it turns you into the biggest boy possible. Thank you guys and have a gentle